Internet. Today I am here to do my June wrap-up. I read 8 books in the month of June, which is pretty awesome. Mostly 4 and 5 star, couple 3 star. So I'm gonna get right into it. The very first book I completed in June, I actually don't have a copy of anymore because I unhauled some books last month when my friends are in town and we went to the used bookstore. And I wasn't a huge fan of this one, so I already unhauled it because I didn't know when I was going to get back. But that book was Furthermore by Tahereh Mafi. This is her first middle grade book. It's kind of whimsical. It's about a girl named Alice who's a colorless girl. She lives in a very colorful world and her father's gone missing. So she teams up with this boy named Oliver to try and find her missing father in the land of Furthermore. This one was just a little bit too whimsical for me. I listened to the audiobook. It really didn't hold my attention. I thought about DNFing it a couple times because I just wasn't into it at all. Sometimes with whimsical stories, I have a hard time getting into them if it's too whimsical. I thought the narrator that did the audiobook did a great job. The story just wasn't really for me. I can see the appeal if you were into that kind of whimsical factor. I can see why people would really love this book. This one just wasn't for me. I only gave it 3 stars. Yeah, it wasn't my taste personally. The next book that I read in June was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This book has been getting nothing but hype since it came out at the beginning of the year, and I definitely see why. So when Jude was a little girl, a fairy actually comes and murders her parents, and this fairy is actually the father of Jude's older sister, and so he ends up taking her older sister plus Jude and her twin sister back to the fairy world to live with him, and she's raised in the fairy world, and there's a lot of political intrigue and it's just crazy. I didn't do a very good job explaining this book, but it's very good. It's one of the better fairy books that I've read. I definitely see why it's super hyped. The beginning had me super intrigued. I will admit there were a few parts in the middle where I wasn't necessarily losing interest, but I was kind of starting to wonder why this book was so hyped. I wasn't really sure, and then once I got to the last third, I was like, my mind was blown. I was super into it. I couldn't put it down. I want the second book right now. And even though I gave this book 4 stars, I'm thinking about upping it to 5, because even though there were a few times where I was kind of doubting it, I still haven't really stopped thinking about it. And I'm still really excited about book 2, The Wicked King. And I have to wait till next year. I'm not happy about it. I was scheming like the whole time of like all these different possibilities, and then something else would happen. And I was like, okay, so these possibilities are ruled out, but maybe this can happen. And I just got really into it. So I definitely see why it's hyped. So like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I think I might up it a little bit just because I haven't stopped thinking about it, and I'm really excited about book 2. The next book I completed might actually be my favorite book that I've read so far this year. I freaking love this book. I don't know why it took me so long to read it. And that book was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. So V.E. Schwab is my favorite author. This is an adult kind of sci-fi fantasy book. And it's about 2 college students, Victor and Eli. And Eli is trying to figure out kind of what creates what they call EOs, or extraordinaries. Basically like people that have extraordinary powers, like superheroes. What causes people to get those? Where do they get them from? And is it something that can be made? And so this book takes place during that, and then like 10 years later. I don't want to say too much more than that because I really didn't know a whole lot going into this book other than that, and I don't even really know if I knew quite that much, and I'm kind of glad that I went in as a surprise. But holy shit, this book was so good. Victoria Schwab just is so good at creating morally great characters. Like, you're rooting for them, but at the same time they're not doing great things, but you still love them. And I really loved this book. I cannot wait for Vengeful, which is the sequel to Vicious, and I believe it's from a different character's point of view, so it's more like a companion sequel. I am so excited. Like I said, I think this might be my favorite book of the year. I loved this book so much, and I cannot recommend it enough. One thing I will say, one thing that I really like about Victoria Schwab's books is she writes for a lot of different genres. She writes adult, YA. She has a new middle grade book coming out, but I think that if you're a fan of YA and you're kind of afraid to get into adult fantasy, she's a really good place to start, because even her adult books, like the writing style is still similar to her YA stuff, so it's really easy to get into if you're kind of new to it. But oh my gosh, this book is so good. You've got to read it if you haven't already. 5 out of 5 stars easily, and I don't know why it took me so long to read this book. I think this is my second favorite Victoria Schwab book. First one being A Conjuring of Light. I loved this book. I'm obsessed with it. And I cannot wait for Vengeful. And I've gone on long enough, so let's move on. The next book I completed was Shatter Me by Tara Mafi. This is a YA dystopian book about a girl named Juliet who has a fatal touch, so whenever she touches somebody, they die. I mean, it's a dystopian. There's like a revolution kind of movement and all that stuff going on. This book is super popular, and I get it. It wasn't my favorite, don't hate me. The first bit of it, the first chunk, I was really kind of bored, to be completely honest. I considered DNFing it. I'm glad that I didn't, because it got way better, and I do want to read the next one because I got really intrigued with what was happening. But again, it just wasn't what I wanted it to be. I was kind of disappointed. I expected to like it more than I did, because I like dystopian. And this one is so beloved on BookTube. I don't know, it was just kind of a disappointment for me. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't know. Don't hate me. I liked it. I didn't love it. So that's kind of where I am with Shatter Me. Next is the one book that I managed to complete during Read-A-Rama. I had 3 on my TBR. I finished one during that week, and then I finished another one like right after the readathon was over. But the one book that I did complete during Read-A-Rama was Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a YA contemporary about a girl named Mara whose twin brother Owen was accused of raping one of her best friends. And it goes into how Mara and her family are trying to deal with that, and how her friend is trying to deal with that went through it. Another thing about this book, it is own voices for the bisexual rep, because Mara is bisexual, as is the author. And actually Mara ends up having a relationship with a genderqueer character, which was refreshing. But this book was really, really fantastic. It was really, really well done. It's really like an emotional read, obviously, but I really like those like hard-hitting contemporaries, you know, that make you like just really sad sometimes. I don't know why. I don't know what that says about me. Definitely be in the right headspace for this, because there's a huge trigger warning for sexual assault and rape. But I thought it was so good. Again, this is probably another contender that's going to make my top books of the year. I really, really loved it. I thought it was really well done. I love Ashley Herring Blake's writing style. This is the second book of hers that I read, and I've given both of them 5 stars. I gave this one 5 stars, FYI. But yeah, I highly recommend this if that kind of content doesn't bother you. It's really, really good. The next book I completed was Beneath the Sugar Sky by Seanan McGuire. This is the book that was on my TBR for Read-A-Rama, and I started during Read-A-Rama. I just didn't finish during Read-A-Rama. But this is the 3rd book in the Wayward Children series, which is a series about children who have gone to different portal worlds like Wonderland, Oz, Narnia, and they've come back to the real world and are having trouble dealing with where they are. And so they all end up going to Eleanor West's School for Wayward Children, and it's kind of a place where they can all like be in a place where they understand each other. While they wait for the doors to their worlds to hopefully one day open again so they can go back. This is the 3rd book. This is a companion series, so each one follows a different main character and has a different storyline, and it's not necessarily like chronological. This is more of a direct sequel after the 1st book, Every Heart a Doorway, where the 2nd book, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, is a prequel to that 1st book. So in this one we see a lot of familiar characters from the 1st book, but we also meet a lot of really new characters, which were great. I really love this series. I love how unique it is. For such short books, Seanan McGuire packs in so much story and so many details, and I don't understand how she does it, but she does it so well. It kind of boggles my mind a little bit. The cast is always super diverse as well. In this one, our main character is fat and I loved the fat representation. We also have a trans main character, we have an Asian main character, and I believe there was a Muslim side character. And there's probably more that I can't think of. And I also really love how unique each book is. It really is unlike anything I've ever read before. I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's my least favorite of the 3 published so far, but I still really, really loved it, and I cannot recommend this series enough. The next book I completed was The Bells by Dhonielle Clayton. This is a YA fantasy story about a girl named Camellia who is a belle. So in this world, there are different bells that are born. It's kind of a family job, and it is a group of girls whose job is to use their power to make everybody else beautiful and to change the way they look. Once a particular group of bells comes of age, they basically have, I guess, like a competition, for lack of a better word, to figure out who the favorite is, and the favorite gets to work for the royal family. So this book was super unique. It's unlike anything I've ever read before, or even like dreamed about before, and I loved that. There was a little bit of a romance in this book. It felt kind of unbelievable and rushed. So I really didn't like that, and that kind of messed up different plot points later on for me because of that, how I was feeling that way. But I thought the characters were super duper interesting. I thought the villains in this book were like cruel in a way where I really want to see them get like just crushed because they're awful, but like in a good way. Overall, I really liked this book. I think that it's definitely worth reading. It ended on a really high note. The ending was fantastic. I cannot wait to read the second book. And I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. And the very last book I completed in June was a reread, and that book was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This is one of my favorite series, and I'm rereading it to get prepared for the last book coming out in October, Kingdom of Ash. So this is the first book in the Throne of Glass series. There is a set of prequel novellas called The Assassin's Blade, but if you've never read this series before, you really need to read Throne of Glass first. So this series is about a young woman named Celaena Sardothien, who is an assassin who's been in prison for about a year. And at the beginning of Throne of Glass, the crown prince of the kingdom shows up at this prison she's been in and tells her that his father, the king, is holding a competition for there to be a new king's champion who will basically be his personal assassin. And the prince wants Celaena to be his champion, and if she wins after so many years of service to the king, she'll be able to be free. So Celaena decides that it's a good deal, and she goes on back with the prince. There's way more to the story, but you really don't need to know any more than that diving in if you haven't read the series yet. Being back in this world is just so much fun. I'm really enjoying it. I loved these books. The first time I read them, I got hooked, and I like read all the ones up through Queen of Shadows in like a month, because at the time that was all that was out. And I'm really enjoying my reread. I've already started Crowned with Midnight, which is the second book, because I just didn't want to wait. But I highly recommend this series. While it gets a lot of flack for not being diverse, and while that is something that does bother me, I still think that it is a really good story. I think that the writing is really well done, and if you like fantasy, I think you would enjoy it. So obviously I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to continue on with my reread. So that is it for my June wrap up. Let me know down in the comments if you have read any of these books and what you thought about them, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!